husband and I own a small business. We have 13 employees. We are in contract manufacturing. Over the last 2 years, 40 contract manufacturing and support businesses have folded in the state. That's only in the state. And it is ridiculous. We're getting hit by the state of New Hampshire with an increase. They doubled for the unemployment tax. They doubled the amount we have to withhold on, and they upped it to 6.2% in the state of New Hampshire. That's one little item. We are a subchapter S corporation, so we have to pay personal taxes on what we earn in the company. I've been doing the bookkeeping, working at least 30 hours a week in our company for over 35 years. And I have never been paid a cent. So I work on the outside as well. I'm retired now, but I worked at another job for 19 years so that we could survive. I mean, we're not rich. We're not rich. We have assets which count as something, but money is owed on them. And we cannot find the work that we need to survive. We've had the worst 2 years in our history, in the last 2 years. And I just have a suggestion as to corporate taxes, and nobody's going to hear this, nobody's going to want to hear it, especially on the left. But we have so many companies. Cisco is totally out of the country. They are manufacturing totally overseas. So what if we decide, Ireland, I think, has the lowest tax rate, and there is a code within the IRS that allows American companies, as long as they have a building and doing some manufacturing overseas, they don't have to report. They can keep their money over there. GE is doing it, and that's why they paid no taxes here this year. It is terrible. And if we discontinued that code and we provided a lower tax rate like Ireland, which is less than 10%, to the corporations, provided they employ 40,000 people. If they employ, they would get a reduction in their corporate tax rate, they would come back to this country. It is getting very expensive to do business overseas, especially in China. And they are gouging us. But the freight cost to bring everything from over there has increased dramatically. It has increased in our business. UPS is charging me, Ross Express, all of them, such a fuel surcharge that it's unbelievable. Our cost of business, we haven't been able to give our employees a cost of living raise, never mind a merit raise, in the last 3 years. And we just can't compete. And we do government contract work as well, and there are companies out there that are doing this work for less than the cost of the material. And I have a suggestion that would do. And close the, and I also had a question on why haven't we as the state of New Hampshire requested a waiver from Obamacare, just like 1,500 other unions, districts, states have asked for.
Good luck.
Well, there was a lot in that question, so I'll try to answer it in 26 different parts. Let me take one of the things you said first. You referenced GE Capital. What GE Capital did essentially was take advantage of a tax loophole in the tax code, carried forward losses and paid nothing. So I would argue that that's not fair. We should get rid of those loopholes and again treat every taxpayer, whether it's a corporation, a small business, a subchapter S, or an employee, individual, the same. Secondly, the United States of America has the highest corporate tax rate in the world.
In the world.
But they don't pay it. So they don't pay it.
Well, so you know what? That's the problem. We have the highest tax rate. So here's something we agree on. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and we have so many loopholes for individuals and businesses to get around. That's not right. That is not right. So what we do in what actually the budget does, one of the things in the House budget is directs ways and means to eliminate those corporate loopholes. That has bipartisan support in Washington.
So do it. Just do it.
Well, we did. We passed it. We passed it.
Well, pass it on its own, not hide it for somebody else.
Well, you know, the Senate can take the provision and pass it themselves. I mean, we've already passed it in the House. This is something that I think most Americans agree, most Republicans and Democrats in Washington agree, and it sounds like most Republicans and Democrats in this room agree. So you know what? We actually agree on more things than maybe we think. I want to thank you for investing and taking a risk in creating a small business. That is the engine of this state. It's the engine of this country. And it's what makes the American dream possible.
I have one more comment. I think if every department in the federal government had to be audited every year, like we audit our books every year, we'd find a lot of lost money, or they'd have to speak up why it's lost.
It's a very good point. Let me tell you what is happening relative. First of all, I support auditing every department. I support auditing the Fed. We've audited a few departments already, GAO audits, and they are going to continue. I neglected to tell everybody what committees I'm on. I'm on the Budget Committee, I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, I'm also on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. They all have varying degrees of importance for New Hampshire for different reasons. Oversight is the committee in which we will review and review through the committee process how taxpayer dollars are spent. So as these audits come back, we hold hearings, identify the areas of bipartisan support and agreement for elimination of those redundancies or duplicative programs, and return those dollars to debt and deficit reduction. That is going to, only 3 have been audited so far. We're going to continue to provide those audits. But there's a second thing that we ought to do. And this was interesting. The first couple of months I spent in Washington, I learned very quickly that they operate very differently than you do as a family, as a business owner, or as a municipality. You have the president who proposes a budget, then you have the House that proposes a budget, then you have the Senate that proposes a budget. And then all of those budgets, the House budget goes to the committees of jurisdiction, the appropriations committees then decide how much money they're going to spend. The same thing happens on the Senate. They get together and try to figure out an agreement. There is very little oversight in that process, hence seeing this skyrocketing spending all over the place. So there's a solution. First, the 1974 Budget Act, I think, needs to be revamped. And you need one thing. You need biennial budgeting. And what that would do is you craft a 2-year budget, and then the Committee of Jurisdiction has oversight over its appropriations. So you spend 1 year budgeting, and you spend 1 year overseeing the dollars that are being spent. And if they're not being spent properly or effectively or efficiently or for their intended use, they're brought back until they can get that program straight. Now, this at one point was a very foreign concept to Washington because it changes the balance of power. It now seems to have a lot of support, certainly amongst the freshman class, and it has its growing support with more veteran legislators, because I think they're starting to get the fact that America's angry with the way Washington is spending taxpayer dollars. So I think you're going to see bipartisan support for that, and I think you'll see that systemic change put in place. The other important systemic long-term change that I think we need is a balanced budget amendment. We ought to be able to balance our books. You have to do it. You know, Conway has to do it. The federal government ought to do it. And simply right now it's not happening. We're spending at a rate of 1.6, 1.7 trillion more than we take in. That's about 40 to 42 cents of every dollar we spend is borrowed money. Now, I don't think anybody believes that's good public policy. I mean, you wouldn't, if, I ask people this, if you saw the balance sheet of the country, how many of you would invest in that entity? And if you think about it, our GDP is $14.6 trillion. And our debt is 14.3, now almost $14.4 trillion. Nobody would invest in that entity if they saw that balance sheet. So we've got a real, this is a critically important time in the country. And it does take, I think, a lot of patience, a lot of discipline, and a lot of members of Congress reaching across the aisle to say, let's hold hands, try to fix this problem, and create a better, stronger country for my kids, for your grandkids, for future generations. And I believe we can do it. I believe we can.